have to really understand the kind of insanity that really exists behind it. Colonel Hum, his name was, he interrupted the interview. Fortunately, he also has been discharged from the Pentagon. I'm not quite sure what he ever did, but he's gone. Colonel Rod Davis, you remember, who made one of my favourite of all statements ever about the spectrum. The right is over here, we're somewhere in the middle, and we look at prisoners and stuff like that. Anyway, he found God and is now spreading the gospel somewhere in the United States, so that's good. Mr. Crystal, one of arguably the most dangerous people I've ever met, he's been given a column in the New York Times. The bit of good news is that the taxi driver is out of Guantanamo. John Bolton, who is Fife's sort of political soulmate, he sort of ranged the world like some demented bear. He was appointed by George Bush to represent the US at the United Nations, which he loathed. But when the Democrats took control of Congress in 2006, the only thing they did that made any difference was that they forced his sacking. He, incidentally, in that bit at the end where he says, "Are you Labour Party?" it's sort of amazing. It was absolutely gobsmacked me that, his main ally is Blair and the Labour Party, and he's sort of being all cheeky and saying, "You and the Labour Party." Then he said, you and the Communists. Well, it went on there where I actually said, well, the Communists are rather conservative too. And then it kept going, and we had this really stupid political, well, it wasn't a political discussion, but he actually left looking slightly confused. But I think what that film was saying, and I do believe it is absolutely true, that the great rising of people, particularly on February the 16th, 2003, was not some aberration, some disappointed mass that it's often portrayed as being. You only have to talk to people like Mozambique, who says, without the opposition, without world opinion, it means the resistance in the streets, and specifically the Stop the War movement in this country and Stop the War movements in other countries, without that, the most terrible things would have happened to many, many more people. And I think, my own feeling is, without that resistance, then Iran would have been attacked already. In fact, I don't think there's really any doubt about that. I mean, we have the kind of propaganda that tried to generate this attack on Iran. Here's the Guardian of the 22nd of May this year. Iran's secret plan for summer offensive to force US out of Iraq. The whole piece is bullshit. And I say that with not just to enjoy saying it is bullshit. It is. It's anonymous. It's someone who's planted this story with this irresponsible journalist, Simon Tisdall, and here it is in the most liberal paper in the country. This morning's Guardian, which I didn't bring along, I meant to, of course, has across the front page revealed the Israelis were about to attack Iran, and Bush apparently stopped them. Well, we knew the Israelis were going to do it, but I think that this compounding of the horrors in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere in the world, of course, has been stopped in its tracks in many respects, and especially probably what was going to be the most horrific attack of all, and might still be, of course, but so far not, and that's the attack of Iran. I think that has been stopped by the resistance of people. I mean, the importance of this public resistance throughout the world, which is always diminished in the media. In fact, it doesn't exist in the media. People always say, well, why isn't there any uprising among ordinary people and so on, putting aside, all the mass movements in Latin America, South Africa, and elsewhere in the world. The reason that we haven't had this inferno that Iran would have caused, I think, is because of that. The film, of course, tells us quite a lot about the present situation, the present US election. The backers of Barack Obama are the people who were the architects of the carnage you saw in the film. People like Brzezinski, the designer of the modern great game in Afghanistan. He's now the chief foreign policy guru to Barack Obama. Madeleine Albright, who famously said on television when she was asked whether 500,000 children dead in Iraq during the sanctions was a price worth paying, and she said yes, it was worth it. She too is an important advisor to Barack Obama. Richard Holbrooke, a man probably singly more responsible for the carnage and mess in the Balkans than most, is also one. I'm not sure there'd be anybody here who would really be taking seriously any of the so-called, quote, change that Mr. Obama has offered, but I think the people around him are good enough reminder. I don't think we really have to go into McCain and Sarah Palin, because they are what they are, they're transparent. We find ourselves in a state of war and incipient war, and the association, of course, of the so-called credit crunch is very explicit, because the gratuitous invasions and wars that have been conducted around the world, and we go to the war in Somalia, which is hardly mentioned, and now the beginning of a so-called new Cold War against Russia. These have been funded by the Americans printing money. And the last time that happened was during Vietnam, when they printed money to fund that war, which by comparison was pretty cheap compared with, say, Afghanistan, which is now apparently costing several trillion dollars, though that's not publicly admitted, of course. So the two are linked, of course. These American wars are now being funded by the most extraordinary debt